You mark my words, Skyler. Toe the line, or you will wind up just like Hank.
Do you know someone who craves power, hides behind charm, or quietly manipulates those around them? In Breaking Bad, these traits come to life through Walt, Saul, and Skyler. Narcissism drives so many of their choices, but it shows up in completely different ways. Walt's narcissism is loud and destructive. Saul's is clever and self-serving. And Skyler's is quiet but calculated. Today we'll take a closer look at how these three characters reveal the many faces of narcissism. And who knows, we might even spot those traits in the people around us, or maybe even in ourselves. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. At its healthiest, it looks like confidence or ambition, the traits that help people succeed. But at its worst, it becomes harmful, an inflated ego, a lack of empathy, or this constant need for admiration. In Breaking Bad, sometimes it's situational.
What do you want exactly? Because if you don't want to give me that list, then I've truly got no use for you.
And at other times, it becomes a deep, destructive pattern. Well, none of the characters would necessarily meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, except for maybe Walt. Their behaviors give us a fascinating look at how narcissism operates. Subtle, extreme, and everything in between. And when we think of Breaking Bad and narcissism, we immediately think of Walter White. He's a textbook example of grandiose narcissism. This type of narcissism is shown with arrogance, a hunger for power, and a constant need for admiration. At his core, Walt's self-worth hinges on being recognized as brilliant and capable.
It can be done exactly how I want it. The only question is, are you the man to do it?
His journey through Breaking Bad reveals how this need evolves into a consuming power, a force driving him to make decisions that ruin not only his life, but also the lives of those around him. Walt's transformation into Heisenberg is more than just an attempt to provide for his family. It's about feeding his ego. Before his cancer diagnosis, he feels unimportant, a high school teacher wasting his potential, a husband overshadowed in his own home, and a father unable to secure a future for his children. These feelings of inadequacy are what ignite the grandiosity we see as he rises in the meth world. He craves acknowledgement, whether it's from his family, his enemies, or the criminal underworld. One unforgettable example is when Walt says to Skyler,
I am not in danger, Skyler. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
For Walt, saying those words isn't just about scaring Skyler. It's about asserting his dominance, demanding recognition as someone powerful and untouchable. Underneath this bravado, though, lies a fragile ego, terrified of failure and irrelevance. While Walt's narcissism is bold and domineering, Saul's takes a more subtle form. It is cleverly disguised behind his charm and his quick wit. From the moment we meet him, Saul positions himself as the ultimate fixer, someone who thrives on being indispensable. This self-image of being the guy with all the answers isn't just about helping others. It's deeply tied with his inflated sense of self-worth. Saul's grandiosity shows up in how he markets himself, from his flashy commercials.
I had a good job until my boss accused me of stealing. I better call Saul.
To his over-the-top office decor designed to project success and authority. Beneath the showmanship, however, lies a need for constant validation. Saul craves recognition as the smartest, most resourceful player in the room. His lack of empathy becomes more evident as the series progresses.
You two want to go stick your wangs in a hornet's nest. It's a free country, but how come I always got to get sloppy seconds, huh?
Saul often prioritizes his own gain over the well-being of others, justifying morally dubious actions to protect himself or expand his influence. Whether it's suggesting ways to launder drug money or orchestrating schemes that endanger lives, Saul's decisions constantly and consistently reflect a willingness to exploit others for personal benefit. Even when he helps Walt and Jesse, his advice it's rarely altruistic. He's always angling for a cut or a way to ensure his own safety. This blend of self-interest and charm is what makes him so effective.
You talking about a hitman?
Assuming that's still what they're called.
Wrong answer. That's what the kids call epic fail.
It also reveals the darker side of his narcissism. He also has a relentless pursuit of power. While he may not seek control in the traditional sense, like Walt, he leverages his legal expertise to manipulate situations and maintain the upper hand. His self-perception as the ultimate criminal lawyer blinds him to the larger consequences of his actions. Saul often downplays the risks involved in his schemes, demonstrating a kind of reckless overconfidence typical of narcissistic traits. His belief that he can outsmart anyone leads him to underestimate the dangers of working with someone as volatile as Walter White, a miscalculation that ultimately puts him in harm's way. Now, what makes Saul's narcissism particularly compelling is how it operates within this morally gray area of Breaking Bad. Unlike Walt, whose narcissism often results in overt destruction, Saul's operates in a subtler, more insidious way. He uses charm and humor to mask his self-serving motives, making him both likable and deeply flawed.
You're gonna get me off, right?
What do I look like? Your high school girlfriend? 5 fingers, no waiting? That's a joke, Brandon. Lighten up.
This duality not only highlights the complexity of this character, but also shows how narcissism can manifest in ways that are both engaging and destructive. Now, Skyler White's narcissism is less talked about, and this is because it is more subtle, but equally significant, showing up in ways that show her need for control, validation, and also just self-preservation.
Maybe I'll tear up a little. I don't know. I'll just have to see what happens in the moment.
You're gonna cry? On cue?
At the core of Skyler's character is a strong desire to maintain a sense of moral authority, even as she becomes increasingly complicit in Walt's criminal empire. Her outward appearance of being a moral, responsible wife and a mother versus her inner need to protect herself and her family's reputation, this reveals a narcissistic tendency to prioritize her self-image over the messy truths of her situation. She has a strong need to control the narrative of her life. When she learns about Walt's drug empire, her initial outrage and moral indignation eventually gives way to a calculated decision to stay involved. Skyler takes charge of laundering Walt's money through the car wash, presenting herself as the practical, the level-headed partner. But beneath this practicality lies a deeper motivation, a need to assert control over a chaotic situation and just reframe her role as one of calculated sacrifice rather than passive complicity. This reframing allows her to maintain her image as someone who is ultimately doing the right thing, even in the face of morally compromising decisions. Skyler's lack of empathy is clear in how she moves in her relationships, particularly with Walt and her sister.
Shut up! Skyler, shut up! Please shut up! Stop. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
And while Skyler often positions herself as a victim of Walt's lies and manipulation, she isn't above using deception and manipulation herself, when it serves her purposes. Her elaborate scheme to stage a gambling addiction as the source of their sudden wealth shows not only her quick thinking, but also her willingness to weave an intricate web of lies to protect herself and her family.
It's such a relief to finally tell you. We're just so glad that we have a strong family to help us through this, that we can all support each other.
By doing this, Skyler manipulates those around her, including her own family, to maintain this appearance of normalcy and control. Her narcissism is perhaps most evident in her interactions with Walt, as their relationship, it just deteriorates. Skyler frequently weaponizes her moral superiority, using guilt and shame to assert her dominance over him. While Walt's actions they're undeniably reprehensible.
After I've told you to keep your damn mouth shut.
Skyler's responses are often less about addressing the harm he's caused and more about reclaiming a sense of power in their dynamic. This is especially clear in her chilling declaration.
And wait
Wait for what? What are you waiting for?
for the cancer to come back.
A moment that underscores her own capacity for cruelty when her sense of control is threatened. So Skyler's narcissistic traits make her neither a clear villain nor a hero. Her actions are rooted in a deep need to protect herself and her family. But they also highlight how narcissism can manifest in ways that are subtle and even self-justifying. The narcissistic traits of Walt, Saul, and Skyler are not just personality quirks. They're the driving forces behind their ultimate fates. Walt's grandiosity leads to self-destruction and isolation. Saul's charm becomes his emotional prison, and Skyler's covert control leaves her estranged and burdened by guilt. Each character's narcissism is a double-edged sword, offering short-term advantages, but also just this heavy long-term cost. Their stories, I think, remind us that unchecked narcissism, whether grandiose, adaptive, or covert, has far-reaching consequences. These characters show us the many faces of narcissism and how it shapes relationships, decisions, and ultimately destiny.